Well, good evening, my lovelies, and thank you for being here. Means a lot tonight, and a very warm welcome to Tuesday Night Live. And cheers. Right, who have we got? Steve Colg is here. Good evening to you. Trace is here. Evening all. And I think, where were you last night, Trace? I noticed that it was your birthday yesterday. And I thought, oh, right, well, we'll do that on the live. And you weren't there, so I didn't do it. So happy birthday for yesterday. And may I be amongst the very first to wish you many happy returns of the day for your next birthday in 364 days' time. The lovely Mustard is here. Hello, my lovelies. Hello, my lovely. Then there's just people randomly shouting each other's names. Oh dear. Evening Boaty says Chris. Oh, there's a new name, Chris McGuire. Well, jolly good evening to you. Thank you for tuning in. Oh dear. Jimmy's feeling a bit weak, back on the meds. Good evening, Jimmy, by the way. Oh, MOT on Thursday for Steve's 25. Good luck with that. Barry's here. Hello all, hope you're okay. Ross is here, Dinosaur Dad. And Trace didn't go out for a birthday meal. She got an Indian takeaway, but they're definitely going to the Italian on Thursday. Oh, what will you have? What will you have from the Italian? My go-to was Pollo alla Vesuvia with a bruschetta to start, and then Pollo alla Vesuvia. There used to be relatively local Chinese, Indian, Italian that we used to go to in, well, it was almost in Dronfield, actually. Oh, that was very good. Oh, dear. Oh, bless you. Hope your day went as well as it could. Yeah, I guess it kind of did. Um, yeah, it's been a bit of a tough day, to be honest, in more ways than one. Uh, oh, you think you're as old as me now? Well, I mean, one doesn't ask a lady her age, but if you are as old as me now, then you won't be for much longer because I've got a birthday coming up as well. I'm pissed again, says Carlos, but we'll behave. How are you, Boaty? Tough day. Yeah, yeah, it was. Was a bit. I mean, but you know, tougher for others. Let's be fair. I will talk about it. Dan Peters says, Mr. Boaty, so if I may have a question, of course. What curry would you consider a very hot, spicy meal? Uh, Gosh, that's a difficult one to answer. I mean, if you, on the restaurant menu, then your standard Madras Vindaloo fowl, but none of those are curries that I would eat. I would say the staff curry that we make. That is, but as I've mentioned before, it's a very different kind of spicy, made in a different way. Oh, cheeseburgers here. Hello, cheesy. Evening all. Hope today was okay. Thank you. Yeah, it was. Yeah. How many covers tonight at work? Asks Ross, and that's a good question. Now, let me work it out. Because I didn't count before I went. Okay, so first time 8, 14, 20. 36, Russ. 36. Oh, okay, Steve. You're going to let us know how much the MOT costs. Fair play. Italian, says Trace. I do like a bucket of pasta. I'll probably have something like Italian sausage penne, sausage, with a side of zucchini frites, frit, and maybe a panettone with masala creme for put. Um, I don't see the problem in asking a lady her age, says Mustard. I asked a fat man about his weight today. Did you really? God. Oh, hello, Mr. Coleman's here, rubbish mechanic. Good evening to you, James. Hope you're well. Oh, and Cheeseburger would like to make it absolutely clear he's not fat, he's stout, and he's proud. Our base, porky, wobble bottom. These are all terms of abuse aimed at the overweight in our society. Dan has tried a vindaloo and a file from his local Indian restaurant. I asked for extra hot. It was very hot, but it wasn't what I would consider very hot. Oh. Bad books, good evening all. Hope today went well. Andrew's here. Good evening, Boaty and everyone. Jimmy's weight isn't too bad. That's good. Trace isn't overweight. She's just under tall. And Cheeseburger says, I see Joseph did an interview with Jeff Buys Cars today. Gosh, did he really? I still don't know who Jeff Buys Cars is. I mean, I presume he's a man called Jeff and that he buys cars. But hey ho. Okay. Right, today then. Today. Well, let's take it in order. I was up in good time. Fortunately, thank God I did. At the last minute, because I was up, really in good time, at the last minute, I decided to leave half an hour earlier than I planned, and it's a bloody good job that I did. Oh, British motorways, honestly. So that averted what would otherwise have been a disaster. If I'd have left at the time that I was planning to leave, then I would have been absolutely, no doubt about it, 100% late. In fact, I would have missed pretty much all of the service. Apart from the traffic, the drive down was reasonably pleasant, actually. I struggle with it. It's a drive that I struggle with, to be honest. It's a drive that actually triggers my anxiety, and I'm pretty sure. In fact, I know that that's because I associate that drive latterly with only bad things. I associate it with dealing with the company in the end days when that all got a bit naughty. Won't go into all of that again, but Mustard certainly knows the story. I think some of the rest of you do as well. I associate it with driving home when I got the word that my mother had died, and I then associate it with driving down to care for Dad after his stroke and after Mum went, and I used to dread that. I mean, I loved my father, of course I did, but I was desperately trying to survive after the divorce. I was doing 90-hour work weeks and doing that in 6 days so that I had a seventh day where I could go down drove down 100 mile to Dad and spend the entire day. He didn't need caring for, really. I mean, he did, but he shouldn't have. There was nothing wrong with him. Certainly nothing wrong with him physically. And there was nothing particularly wrong with him mentally. He didn't have he just couldn't cope. He couldn't really cope with anything. And the stroke didn't help. And then when Mum died, he just lost all. But I was annoyed that he just didn't care about anything. So I had to go down on my day off when I was so tired, 100 mile there, 100 mile back. And I had to do a week's worth of laundry. I had to clean every surface, every floor, because there was literally shit everywhere. I had to tidy, clear up all of his half-empty cans of Carlsberg Special Brew. Go and do a shop for him, sort his garden, apologise to the neighbours, buy new clothes. Oh God, it was a nightmare. And yeah, I did that week after week after week. Well, for years I did that. So I just don't associate that journey with anything good. And that means that I struggle with it. It's a muscle memory, except that the muscle in question is your mind. And, you know, so whenever I'm on that journey, my anxieties are just a little bit triggered. I tell myself that it's fine, it's blah, blah, blah. But I'm always a little bit on edge doing that particular journey. But other than that, and the fact that there were roadworks and traffic jams and whatnot, the drive down was quite pleasant. I was in Mingebag. The sun was beautiful, really shining, although a low winter sun can be awkward, especially if the roads have been slightly wet and have been salted, because you're constantly getting spray onto your windscreen. And then with the sun, a low sun really brightly on that, means you're constantly washing your windscreen and so on. But other than that, it was great. I had all my new songs on my portable electric telephone, so that was plumbed into Mingebag's onboard gramophone, and I really enjoyed that. And it was grand. So the journey was M1 onto the A42, M42, and then jumping onto the M5 and coming off at Worcester North. And eventually managed to find my way to the crematorium, which was right by. And this was the first jerker. I'd given up on trying to find a sign, so I'd asked Siri to direct me to the crematorium. And I was really close by, and there was a weird Chinese. And it was a kind of Chinese, I don't mean a Chinese, but sorry, I'm being disrespectful there. A Chinese takeaway. There was a Chinese takeaway, but it was weird. It was like in a kind of standalone. It wasn't like a proper building. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like a converted storage container, but a larger one. I can't describe it. And I thought, and I think I actually said on camera because I was filming at the time, I said, you know what? I'm sure I've been to that Chinese. That just rings such a bell. I'm sure I've been there. And I even remembered the time. It was so long ago. So long ago. It was when I was with Donna, and we were the deputy management couple at Mad O'Rourke's Kipper House, which used to be the Red Lion out at Bradley Green. And we were living in the static caravan in the car park. We'd both have been about 20 years old, I think. And I just passed my driving test after Donna got caught with no insurance. So I had to do my driving test super double quick. Did it in um I hadn't had a driving lesson, and I suddenly needed a driving license. I mean, in this day and age, in that situation, I'd just I'd go up to Mustard's, I'd go to the Milkston Road, I'd go to one of those electricity covered up things, and I'd ring the number on the poster on there that says, need a driving license, ring this number, and I'd just pay 100 quid or 200 quid or whatever it was and get a driving license. Couldn't do that back in those days. I mean, for a start, I didn't know the Milkston Road existed. I would have been too frightened to go to Rochdale, and mobile phones didn't exist. So, you know, I suppose you'd have to have gone into a telephone box and looked for. But anyway, so that didn't happen. I found a local driving instructor, a guy called Pete Daniel, explained the situation to him, and he gave me a lesson or two per day, and I passed my test in 5 or 6 days, something like that. You could do that then. You didn't have to wait for 2 years for a driving test like you do now. And so we were in this bloody static caravan, and it was our and I just got my first car, my Arnold, my Austin Ambassador 2 litre HLS in silver with orange Draylon velour interior, registration FFD 526Y. You never forget the reg of your first car. And it was our night off. And I remember that we were having a drink in the pub, our pub. And Les and Jan were the reason that there were two management couples in there was they'd had a really bad manager in there, he was either a lunatic or he'd had a mental breakdown or both, but he completely lost the plot. The place went to rack and ruin. He kept a stock of dead cats in the freezer, and when a customer complained about their food, he slammed a dead cat down on their table and said, eat that instead then. And he sat in the car park with a catapult and fired rotten tomatoes at the customers' cars. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. That actually happened. And the pub was the flagship of the chain, Madder Rourke Little's Pub Company. Colum and Sheena, I think his wife was. And the pub was closed down, health and safety. So when they reopened the pub, they put two management couples in there. There were Les and Jan, who were super experienced. They would have probably been in their mid to late 40s, I suppose. They were just old to us. And they were just, they had all of the experience in the world. And there was me and Donna, the young upcomers. But Les and Jan had family, so that's why we ended up living in a static caravan in the bloody car park. And so it was a night off, and we were having a drink, and then we had another drink, and then Les had a quiet word with me, and he said, never get drunk in your own pub. And I thought, yeah, that makes total and absolute sense. So we went off and had the next drink somewhere else, and then we went into Worcester, and we ended up going, I'm sure, to that Chinese takeaway that I passed by the crematorium. I remember it so well. And then I just went round the island, heading towards the Crem, and there was a pub called the New Checkers. And I thought, that's our Checkers. That's our place. That's where I used to go on a Friday night. I'm sure it is. Because in the very early days, before I turned pro as a vocalist, when I was doing even before I was doing the amateur talent competition circuit, we were following. We were as a group. We were following a karaoke cabaret outfit, and Friday night was this Checkers place in Worcester, which was a bit down market for me. It's not the sort of place I would have ever gone into, not in a million years. The rest of the venues were better. Sunday, I can't remember all of them. Sunday was the Barnt Green Inn, which Cheeseburger will tell you is a nice place. Monday, can't remember. It was somewhere. Tuesday was the Spring Meadow in Droitwich, which I'm sure somebody told me is no longer there. Wednesday was the Duck on the Hagley Road in Brum. Thursday was a big night. Thursday was oh, hello, my shirt's open. Thursday was the Bel Air nightclub at the Belfry. So that was a big old night. And then Friday night was this slightly down market pub in Worcester. But it was a great night in there. It was I'd never have gone there otherwise. And funnily enough, a few years later, if we weren't doing anything else, if we didn't have a proper gig, we would actually go and gig there ourselves, you know. And by that time, we were a full, massive cabaret setup. And we were doing huge corporate gigs for thousands of pounds. We did News of the World, News International, we did Tesco International, all of the biggest corporate dues. And if we had nothing better to do or nothing else on, we'd go to the Checkers on a Friday night and we'd actually gig there ourselves, do the show. And I drove past it on the way to the Crown and I thought, bloody hell. I could never have found it in a million years. I was probably always drunk when I drove there. I took Zoe there one night. Bloody hell, poor cow. What did you do to deserve that? God, I'd forgotten about that. I actually took Zoe there one night. God, I was mad about Zoe. And yeah, so, and then I found the crematorium, and I better catch up with some comments actually. That's the one, Boaty, you great fat wobble bottom. Yeah. Cheesy and I have got a thing. We can throw any not the 9 o'clock news quotes at each other, and we'll both know exactly what we're going on about. You're talking about you're not stout. You're not even overweight. In fact, you're skinny. I don't have to take that from you, you great wobble bottom. You thin puff. Oh dear. I've just got into Jeff Buys Cars too, says Ross. Very good little channel. Evening all, says Joe. Thought there was no live this evening. Hope you're okay, Jason. I'm here. But thank you, Joe, and thank you for your message. I saw an unusual sight, says Bad Books. A Rover R8 Silverstone, pre-facelift. Small whale tail spoiler. BBS style alloys and graphics on the grey door bottoms. Neil's here. Hello all. Sorry, I'm late. A lot has gone on. How are we all? Good evening to you, Neil. Andrew's got to go. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you. Cheeseburger is asking Neil if he had to recover an MG off the M5. Of course he didn't. Mingebag behaved absolutely faultlessly, as we all knew she would. Although, in retrospect, not the car that I would have taken for that journey, in retrospect. Oh, the traffic coming back. I've had the worst night. Oh, that's the Chinese I told you about last night, you melt. I did wonder about that, Cheeseburger. Yeah, I did wonder about that because I remembered you telling me about that. Where was the wake? Oh, Christ. Now then, where was the wake? It was in Ombersley, and that was another real jerk up memory lane because the service I was with Sharon for all of the service, and so she gave me the postcode for the wake. It's about 8 miles away from the Crown. So I'm just following my portable electric telephone blindly. And I know I'm basically heading in the direction of Ombersley. And suddenly I find myself on the dual carriageway. And there was one particular section driving up this dual carriageway, and I thought, I'm in pain. And it gradually dawned on me that what I was actually on, whatever this dual carriageway is, I can't remember the name of it, but what it actually is, it is the K8, either the K8 or the K825, or actually both. And for those who don't know, I'm sure you all know what a time trial is. A cycling event where you race alone and against the clock. Riders are set off at 1 minute intervals over a set course, which is a set distance, and the quickest time wins. Yeah? Now, time trials originated way back in the day when cycle racing was illegal. Maybe you didn't know this, but cycle racing used to be illegal. Massed start racing certainly used to be illegal. So to try and get round it, they developed the time trial so that it wasn't a massed start, but it was still a race. So when they designated the courses, they gave them codes so that the authorities wouldn't know where these illegal events were taking place. And that just clung on and on and on. As far as I'm aware, it's still the case to this day. So every race course would have a code, and it would have a letter which would denote the basic area. And my area around Worcestershire was K. And then it would have a number which told you what the actual course was. And that bloody dual carriageway I was on today was the K8, which was a 10 and a 25, a 10-mile course and a 25-mile course, both incorporating that stretch of dual carriageway. And I used to hate it. I used to hate it because it was a dual carriageway, certainly the 10. And I know some of you don't like me talking about cycling, but balls to you, I'm going to do it anyway. The 10 was just down the dual carriageway, turn at the island, back up the dual carriageway, except that the outward leg was downhill, effectively, and the rearward leg was uphill, effectively. And I wasn't so good at the uphill bits because I was a big old lump. And the thing with the kayak, whereas on the downhill bits, I was quite superb. So the K8 used to be a nightmare because every time I raced on that, and I raced in some big races there against the best people of the day. And, you know, people take timings and people are reporting on it and whatnot. And every time I got to the turn, I was so far ahead of everybody else that it was always just I won't tell you the next. I'll say he. I won't tell you what name. I raced under a different name than the name I've got now. And the thing would always be, he's so far up at the turn, how can he possibly be beaten? Because, you know, I remember I rode against Stuart Dangerfield there, I rode against Chris Boardman there, and I put a minute into them by the turn, and that's in a 10, that's unheard of. And then I lost 2 minutes on on the bloody return. I never won. I never won on the K8. It was just a course that really didn't suit me, and I found myself on it. And I thought, wow, that was a shocker. And then the wake, to get back to answering the question, was somewhere in Ombersley, and oh god, I can't remember. And I didn't manage to get hold of one of the the leaflets with all of the details of the service and everything, and I can't remember the name of the place, but it was a caravan park. I think Holt Fleet. I think it was down Holt Fleet Lane. That rings a bell. I might get it off the video because the sat nav might be speaking on the video and tell me the name of the lane. Then I can tell you what it is. But it was basically a static caravan holiday park type thing somewhere near Ombersley, where apparently Rob had a van, um, and they've got they've got a big leisure complex thing, like a Butlins dinner hall type of thing, where no doubt they do bingo and all sorts of exciting things and a bar and all of that. And it was there basically, and I almost came out of retirement. God, I haven't told you about the service yet, and I'm telling you about all of this. It was quite exciting for a moment. Let me get back to the comments in case I'm missing something amazing. It's a trauma that you went through, Boat, say Skick. Good evening, Skick, by the way. And things in the past can reflect on the present. I think most people suffer with past events, true. Suppose it's always good to remember we have chapters in life. I completely agree with that. Oh, Neil has been having meetings with managers and not having a bollocking for a change. Work and breakdowns in 5 lanes. Oh. The numbers you take from telephone boxes are for different purposes, says Cheeseburger. Yeah, back again, for those who don't know, you youngsters, before the days of the internet and all of that, then your friendly local prostitutes used to advertise in phone boxes. And so, yeah, if you wanted to get your weasel greased and you couldn't find anybody to do it for nothing, or for 6 bottles of Gold Label and half a portion of fish and chips, then you would head to your local phone box and peruse the business cards in there. And again, in those day and age, there was no such thing as photograph. Well, there were no real photographs or anything like that, because there were no mobile phones or anything. So you just looked at a business card and, you got. Let's just say that I think that if a lot of the prostitutes were to sell on eBay or via e-commerce, then the goods would be rejected under the significantly not as described banner. Snad. Oh, those were the days. My first car was a Metro B692 DPU, says Cheesy. It was a shitbox. Ross says mine was a Mark 1 1.3 Fiesta A115 PUS. Skix was a Hillman Avenger GMB 225K 1500 Super. Well, K is 71, isn't it? So that would have been the same age as me. Is the new Checkers an Indian grill now? No, it's still the new Checkers. It's still a pub. My mate, oh God, something else. My dear old Paul Carter, my lovely mate Paul Carter. I met him today, and he was in the Checkers before the funeral. So it's still a pub, definitely not an Indian grill. There was another pub that had changed to an Indian grill very nearby, though. Steakhog says, man who runs behind car gets exhausted. Man who runs in front of car gets tired. Oh, indeed. Barry says, when I'm cremated, I want Disco Inferno playing. Right, music. Oh, the service was a bit bittersweet, but the music, the walk-in music was simply the best. And the 2 other bits of music that played were Elvis Presley, Old Shep. Fucking hell. God, talk about music to slit your wrists by. And then, oh, fuck. Can't remember. Oh, and then the walkout music was the Commitments, actually. Take Me to the River. And the other one, oh, Lean on Me. I think. Lean on me. Bill Withers. How do you make a duck into a truly great soul singer? Put him in the oven until he's Bill Withers. You're welcome. You can use that one. Oh dear. James says, my first car was a 2002 Rover 25 1.4 impression YNO 2 VOU. Too amazing. Somebody has just done a nice thing. Who's done that? Oh, Skick, bless you. Thank you so much, Skick. That's really generous, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. I'll read your. You probably commented as well, and I'll get to that in a while. Yeah, James. 2 amazing years with that, and owned it with my 75 from March 2020 to March 2021. I always knew I'd have a 25 as my first car. Best first car ever. Christ, says Cheeseburger. I only asked where the wake was, and the cycle board answered, time for a pee. Oh, fuck you. John Stoodley's here, the lovely John. Hey, Boaty. Hey, chat. Oh, dear. Nice to have you here, John. And yeah, of course you're still worried. You're bound to be. There is a static. Evening, Simone. Good evening. Good evening to you, my lovely. Thank you for being here. There is a static site on Holt Fleet Lane. That's probably the one then, Cheesy. I can't remember what it was called. Amber. Amber? I can't remember. It's been such a long day. I've not been home or anything. You know, I left, went to the funeral, went to the wake, sat in traffic jams on the motorway for 3 hours and got straight to work late. And then work was crazy tonight, and I just haven't stopped. I'm so tired. I'm so tired that but thank you for being here with me, because I wasn't going to do a live tonight, but to be completely honest with you, I didn't want to be on my own, and I really wanted to be with friends. So that's why this live is happening. So if I ramble or I'm a bit bleak, then forgive me, but thank you to each and every one of you for being with me tonight, because I really needed you, and I'm so grateful for you. Cheers. Absent friends is the toast. Diddly do. I've noticed your candles are getting shorter. Well, I'm just using the, what do you call them? Tea lights. Oh, screen freeze. Mine hasn't frozen, Simone. I think it's you. Have you got dodgy internet? Oh, God, Cheeseburger's talking about football. God almighty, at least cycling's interesting. If there's a football bore, it's got to be worse than a car bore, and I can't go for a pee. First car I ever drove, says Buddy, was a Mark II Escort. NNU 921W. So that's W. 80? 81? Good on you, John. Trying to think good thoughts. Jimmy Quinn has got to go. Good night, all. Thank you for being here, Jimmy. Gosh, the lovely Tracy has been a member for 9 months. And then Skick very kindly sent a super chat, and I'm really, really grateful for that, Skick. Thank you very much indeed. And yeah, Trace has renewed her membership and has been a member 9 months. My God, that's brilliant. Thank you, Trace. Oh dear, Connie's still away, so Simone's feeling lost. Connie, of course, is her Rover 75. The Yellow Star Club. Yeah. Oh, and Joe has been a member for 3 months. Marvellous. Oh, this is good. Mr. Coleman says, what's the difference between a drug dealer and a prostitute? A prostitute can wash her crack and sell it again. Did Joseph tell you that? Asks Bad Books. I imagine not. Right, that's caught up with the. Yeah, I hope your cells get sorted too, Simo. Well, not yours personally, I mean Connie. So, yeah, okay, so getting back to the thing today. So, I made it to the Crown. I was on time. I was about a quarter of an hour early before the doing started. Parking was a nightmare. And people were desperately trying to park anywhere. But as luck would have it, in the main car park, just as I was giving up and going off to try and find somewhere else, somebody pulled out and buggered off, obviously from their previous service. So I was able to park right there. And the first thing that struck me was the sheer number of people. Even before the cars were rocked up, just the sheer number of people milling about outside, I thought, my God, that is a hell of a turnout. And then I was scanning for people that I know or knew or recognised, and I kind of didn't see anybody at all. So I was just standing outside in all of my funereal gear when suddenly there was a voice in my ear, a rather nice voice, saying, "There's a face I recognise," and it was Sharon. It was Sharon from back in the day. First time I've seen Sharon for I don't know how many years. I really don't know how many years. Over 20, well over 20. So that was that. So at least I had somebody to hang with. And there were so many people there. And then the cars turned up. And they were all electric. They were Mustangs, a Mustang electric hearse and Mustang electric limousines. And of course, the cars were carrying the family and Rob, bless him. All of the daughters came out and made a beeline and gave me a hug and whatnot. And there were so many tears, so many tears. So yeah, in we eventually went, and the place was just packed. It was literally standing room only. I got a seat, but I think the majority of people were standing. There were hundreds of people there, but nobody that I really recognised outside of immediate family. And the reason for that became kind of evident as things went on. Now, it was a lovely service, don't get me wrong. And the celebrant, I believe that's what you call them, the celebrant, the the MC, whatever you want to call her, the celebrant, she intrigued me. Now, she was absolutely not my type. She was all nose and knockers, but I totally would have. And if I'd have been 15 years younger, I'd have had a bloody go, I tell you. She was really intriguing. I think it was, physically, absolutely not my type. Nose, knockers, hips. Mustard would have loved her if he could have fattened her up for 6 months. But I really would have. But I think what intrigued me was, and it kind of takes one to know one, the level of sincerity in her fake grief and empathy. And I know that that's going to sound harsh, and I don't mean it to sound harsh. And to call it fake is probably unfair, because I'm sure that she's a lovely person, and I'm sure that she understands that people celebrating a life or grieving a death, I'm sure she understands that emotion, and I'm sure that she does empathize with it. Um, but as somebody who's kind of made a living out of faking sincerity, I recognized what she was doing, and I thought she did it fantastically well. You would have to be really, really cynical to suspect that any of that was an act. And I am really cynical. And I know that it was an act, and it was incredibly well done. And it's exactly the thing that I do myself. So, from one person to another, I mean, absolute respect. And it was a lovely service. I mean, it was really touching. But there is a but, and this is personal. Apparently, well, not apparently, I kind of knew about this. But after Rob and I grew apart, and the reason why we grew apart, now you bear in mind that for a decade or more, me and Rob were like that. Every day, we worked together, we were business partners, we were best friends. And I've told you the adventures that we had together were just amazing. The shows we did, the musicality we had between us, blah, 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 blah. And obviously, at some point, just before I got married, I gave it up, because it was a fantastic thing to do when you're young. But I wanted to be a good husband and a good stepfather. And that wasn't in sync with going out every night to a different part of the UK, getting very drunk, performing, larking about with groupies, and getting back at 7 o'clock in the morning to drink vodka and eat curry. I wanted to have a proper bash at doing the home thing. So I gave it up. And I gave all of the, but Rob didn't want to give it up, perfectly understandably. So I gave all of the equipment, all of the sound and light equipment, I gave to Rob. Didn't take any money for it. I mean, Rob, he was kind of my business partner, but it was kind of my business, and he was a part, technically, I suppose he was an employee, but that's not the way it worked. But, it was my business. I paid him, but we were partners to all intents. And Rob was brilliant at what he did. And this is what I'm going to talk about in terms of the service. I was a little upset that this was all missed out. But the point was, Rob earned me a lot of money. So when I decided to give it all up, the least that I could do was to give him all of the equipment so that he could carry on without having to make any sort of investment himself. And carry on, indeed, he did. But then, of course, we drifted apart, suddenly living different lives. Obviously, social media comes along, we communicate via that, blah, blah, blah. He came to my mum's funeral, all of that sort of thing, but nothing like it was before. And Rob's life changed. He went through a bit of a midlife crisis, and he left his wife, or his wife booted him out. I honestly don't know which it was. And I met Liz today. Oh God, she's lovely. I was there in the creme, and she spotted me. I mean, I'm easy to spot. I'm tall. And she went, and she just gave me the biggest hug ever. But she kind of wasn't the center of attention, and this is why. After we drifted apart, Rob had his midlife crisis, whatever. The marriage broke down, and he moved to Worcester. And then he had a series of relationships, including and I'd forgotten about this, but I fell out with him a bit. because he had a relationship with his daughter's best mate. And I thought, you're not on there, son. You're out of order. But he effectively started a new life in Worcester, and eventually met the lady that he was with until the day that he died, Jo, and they were very happy together. They almost got married. They never got married. And and I found out what went on with Rob's illness. He was diagnosed with COPD, which, that's one thing. And then he was having stomach pains and took some Rennies or whatever. And the next day he still had pains. And his missus, Jo, said, go to the doctor. Went to the doctor, went to get was sent to get some tests. And he had massive cancer in his pancreas. And he was brave about it, opted for treatment, battled it as best as he could. But 5 weeks later, oh, bless him. So it was very quick and very sudden. But yeah, so he started this whole new chapter of his life in Worcester. And by this time, he's doing his own karaoke cabaret. And it would have been amazing. It would have been really, really good. And so, of course, he became incredibly well known. And he was a lovely guy, so he became incredibly popular. And that's why the crematorium was full of people that I didn't know who the bloody hell they were. But the thing was, with the exception of his kids and whatnot, it was almost as if his life prior to Worcester was almost erased. And it wasn't mentioned barely at all in the service at all. And that did rankle with me and with Sharon a bit. 'Cause it was like a whole important lump of his life was cut out in terms of the service. Maybe that's just me or us being selfish about it, but it did rankle with me a bit. And it's like they said about his name. He was cremated under the name that I gave him, Rob Carling. On the Book of Remembrance thing, it was hyphenated because his name was Smith Carling. I don't think he ever changed his name legally. But he was referred to as Carling, and it was mentioned that that wasn't his birth name, that his name was Smith. And the explanation for the name change given was that as a kid or as a young man, he was into CB radios, and his CB handle was Lagerman. That's not why he was called Carling. He was called Rob Carling because he and I started performing professionally together, and we both took stage names. And I took the name Jason Dufault, and I suggested Rob Carling to him because at the time we drank Carling Black Label before we went on to Budweiser, and he took it and he stuck with it. So that kind of peeved me a bit, but they missed out the whole thing that we did together all of those years. And I was peeved with that, not because it cut me out. It's, I know full well it's not about me. I was cut out. I was peeved because they cut out what I think was a really important part of his career as an entertainer. Because when Rob was working with me, and I say with, not for, when Rob was working with me, make no mistake, Rob was an amazing compere. He was a humble, down-to-earth Birmingham guy from Northfield. He had no ego. He had no airs and graces. What you saw was what you got. He had a heart as big as a house. He was a right handful physically, as I told you last night. But make no mistake, he was one of the best compares on the professional cabaret circuit. And when he was working with me, Rob compared massive corporate gigs, massive ones. Like I said before, News of the World, Tesco, News International. I can't remember all of them. Sky. And he compared them, and he was amazing. And we did a lot of big society weddings as well, important weddings, the kind of weddings that get into the glossy country life type magazines. And Rob compared all of those incredibly well, compared and performed. And there was not a mention of this, not a mention of all those years that, not a mention of he and I working together on the amateur talent circuit. It was as if life only started when he moved to Worcester and started doing his own karaoke, which I'm sure was brilliant. But, doing your karaoke in your small social clubs and pubs isn't the same thing as comparing massive corporate gigs, is it? And there was no mention of that. And I thought that was a shame, because I know that he was really, really proud of what he did and what we did together when we were Grand Central, or when we were part of Grand Central. And it did rankle that that was just obviated. But hey ho, maybe it's natural that the more recent stuff takes precedence. Um, Yeah, there was so not a single mention of that, not a single mention of me or any of his other really close friends. Carter, Jeff, not a mention of any of that. Fred, Caroline, nothing, nada, not a bloody sausage. Um, and that was a massive part of him and a massive part of his life. And all of the stuff that they did talk about would never have happened if it wasn't for that. It was with Rob was never a compere, had no idea of being a compere. He was a karaoke singer, but because he got in with me, and me being me started to do all of this pro stuff, then he came along with me. God bless him, and he was just a natural compere. He was a natural entertainer. He was a people person. Everybody just automatically loved him. He was the best compere that you could wish for. Yeah, not a mention, not a mention. So, but the service was lovely. I I got to say goodbye. Oh God, it's so awful. They're in a box. I stroked the coffin. I fist bumped it. I said goodbye, and then we went. Then we went off to the wake. Let's catch up with some comments. I've got time is marching on as well, isn't it? Where did I get to? Oh, that's nice, Kick. The super chat was to show that I do appreciate him and his time, and my past comments are not to annoy, but to be honest. I've never been annoyed by your comments, Kick. Never. I've always really appreciated them, and I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. And I genuinely meant what I said. There's no way that I was going to do a live tonight. I'm upset. I'm sad. I'm physically, I'm knackered. I mean, it's been a long day anyway. I was late going to bed last night with all of the emotion and whatever. I was early getting up this morning, so I'm just so tired. But I wanted to be with you guys because I didn't want to be alone. I wanted to be with friends, and you're all my friends. And thank you for being my friends. My first car, says Steve, was a Vauxhall Astra 1.2 in orange with carpet. Oh, with in orange with orange carpet, etc. Joe should be a yellow star, but as I've changed to this YouTube channel name, I lost my other 4.5 months. Oh well, you'll get back there. Simone has got some food news. She cooked a cottage pie from scratch, and it was bloody lovely. Barry has got a hidden comment. I'm not reading that one out, Barry. Uh, John says, my friend I was telling you about, Jason, he's in hospital. Oh, fucking hell, no. Oh, gosh. He had a heart attack last night. I got a text early hours of this morning from his wife saying he's fighting for his life. Oh, Jesus, John, oh, bless you, bless him, bless his wife. God above. Oh, the world is just full of sadness, isn't it? I said something off the cuff at the end of today's daily diary. You'll see it tomorrow. And I'll say it now because it's important, especially in light of the day I've had and news like John's. Don't take anybody or anything for granted because who knows what's around the corner the next day. Oh dear. I've never seen an electric hearse, says by books. Good idea. Do they have charging points at the Crown? I don't know, Cheeseburger, but I presume they must have. Mr. Coleman says, I'd be so pissed off if I had to make the final journey in an electric hearse. Oh dear. Cheeseburger wants to go in a V8. I'd like to go in a V12. I'm a fan of a V12, to be honest. Diddly do. I don't know. Bad Book says at my auntie's funeral, the undertaker did the humanist service. He did a great job. I think this was that sort of thing. Oh my God, pancreas, worst cancer to get. Well, yeah, apparently so. Pancreatic cancer is vicious, says Cheeseburger. Simone's friend has just come out of hospital after having a lump extracted from his bowel. Trey says, yeah, a friend of mine was excellent friends with someone for 20 years. When the person died, my friend wasn't mentioned once. They'd holidayed many, many times, shared the same interests, but she was erased at and after the funeral. Electric hearses and mobile command. So, service done, covered that, and then off we went to the wake. And, you've said your goodbyes. It's kind of done and dusted. You've left your mate or your dad or your. He was a great grandfather. He was 61 when he died. Didn't realize he was that much older than me. But he was 61 and he was a great grandfather. He had a 6-month-old great granddaughter and a grandfather many times over and a father. But amazingly, and this was really heartbreaking. He's a great grandfather, or he was a great grandfather. His mother was there at the funeral. Bless her, the poor lady. She didn't cope with it terribly well. Dear. So we get to the wake, and what do you do? What are you going to do? There's a bar. There's a buffet, and there's a load of people who probably haven't seen each other for a while. So the mood lightens a bit, doesn't it? And it was mentioned at the service that where the wake was held was where Rob did his last gig. And it was mentioned that his equipment was still there. Presumably taken ill, no time to do anything or whatnot. And so I'm with Sharon. We've been to the bar. We've got a drink, waiting for the buffet to open, and we're having a good old chat, properly catching up. Sharon and I have got a lot of history, and that was lovely. And we're chatting with Rob's brothers and with Liz, his ex-wife, and his daughters, and that's all quite nice. And then when I was at the bar, a guy came up to me and sort of, um, and I looked at him and I thought, and then he spoke. I said, "Fucking hell, it's Carter, Paul Carter." And I just grabbed him in the biggest hug imaginable. It was Paul Carter. There were, he was one of the Gang of Four. They were the Three Musketeers. Rob, his brother Jeff, who was, I think, his brother-in-law, but he was always just his brother. Paul Carter, and then I came along. And Carter was the guy who I owe my entire career to, really, my entire musical career, because it was Carter's. I've told you the story loads of times, but it was Carter who sang the Neil Diamond stuff. And I had no idea who Neil Diamond was, but I loved the stuff that Paul Carter sang. So I started listening. I went and bought all the Neil Diamond albums, and ended up, it was at the Checkers. It was at the pub I was telling you about one Friday night. Carter couldn't turn up. He had something else on. And so I thought, well, as he's not here, I'll have a go at singing his songs. And that was the first time I sang Neil Diamond. And quite a few people said to me, that was good, do that again. And then the next Wednesday, I've told you before, I know, I'm boring you. The next Wednesday, I had the heat of the National Talent Competition. I'd not got anywhere doing the stuff that I was doing, which was singing country songs. Carter had already qualified for the final. And so I said, that heat, I said, do you mind if I do some Diamond stuff? He said, no, go ahead. And I did, and I won the heat, got through to the final. And that was that then. And he never fell out with me for nicking his material. Never. In fact, he was quite flattered, if anything. So I caught up with Carter today, and that was so lovely. As soon as he spoke, I knew that voice so well. So well. And again, he didn't get a mention in the funeral. But so that was awake. And anyway, Rob's gear was all still there, apparently, and all still set up. And his brother came over to me and said, how do you fancy jumping up onto stage using Rob's gear and turn it into an event and host it? I'd had a glass of wine, and I looked at Sharon, and she just beamed out a smile. She said, come on, let's do it. So we jumped up on stage, started checking out the equipment, because, we obviously both knew what we were doing back in the day. Sharon used to work with us, by the way. She was all sorts of things. Very, very talented singer herself, very talented. The biggest competition that I ever ran myself through my company, and it was a massive competition. I mean, the judging panel was like a who's who of talent scouts and managers, and the prize was a full studio session to record an album and a guaranteed slot with the major agent at the time. And that was one I almost got killed over, because literally, actually, that was held in Birmingham. The heat and the final were held in Birmingham. Sharon won it, and she bloody deserved to win it. But everybody knew that me and Sharon were a bit, that there was a personal connection there. And word just got out that it was fixed. It totally wasn't. The judging panel were completely impartial. Sharon was just brilliant. I mean, she was good anyway. That night, she was superb. And she won it. And she deserved to win it. And I've told you before, I got a text message afterwards, saying that from Sharon, saying that one of the girls that got beaten, her other half was a gang leader in Birmingham, and she said, "For God's sake, don't go home. They've told me there's a contract out on you, and there's a team out, and they're going to kill you, basically." So I thought, "Oh right, thanks for the heads up. I won't go home," because it was a bit like now. It was no secret where I live. Why am I talking about that? Oh yeah, so we're at this thing at the wake, and I'm saying it's going to be all different. It's going to be all computerized. It's not going to be like our day. And she's saying it'll be all right. We'll figure it out. So we jump up there, and the deck. It's a Studio Master. I always used to use Studio Master. So I'm checking out the mixing deck, and I'm thinking, well, this is fine. I know what's going on here. So we're going through it, and I'm saying, okay, channel 1 or 2, they're radio mics, and they're going into the right. So they're into that, and these are the radio mics. Channel 3 and 4 are lead mics. Channel 5 is leading to a laptop, and presumably that's where all of the backing music is on MP3 on the laptop. So we're getting our heads around it. I'm figuring out how I'm going to host this, what I'm going to say. I've got all the lines coming up. I was really looking forward to it, actually. And me and Sharon are like kids. We're all excited. So, can't believe we're coming out of retirement and doing this. And cut a long story short, it didn't happen. It turned out that not all of the gear was Rob's. And that some of the gear there was another guy's. The laptop was locked and nobody had the password to it, and so it didn't happen. And the venue just put some background music on. But I was a bit gutted. I would have loved to have hosted that wake, especially as all of that side of things was. And if it had happened, I would have made a telephone call, got cover so I didn't have to go back to the restaurant, and I would have stayed somewhere local that night. I would have turned it into a whole night, and I would have loved hosting that for Rob as the last thing. All of his family wanted me to do it because they obviously know the full history. And I would have just loved it. I could have told all of the stories. I could have massively bigged him up, because there would have been a load of the Worcester people, the newer people, who had no idea that he was a nationwide name doing all of these things. I bet he didn't talk about it all that much, if at all, because he was a humble man who had no ego whatsoever. And I would have loved to have hosted that. Oh, and in fact, I said to Sharon, when it was clear that it couldn't happen, I said, look, we need to do this. I said, I've got to go. I've got to get back to the restaurant. But I said, do a bit of networking, get contact details and whatnot of everybody that we know from the old school. And let's put a night on where all of the old school get back together in Rob's name. And we'll do we'll do a show. We'll do a night. We'll all come out of retirement for one night only. God knows if it'll ever happen, but it's a lovely idea. So yeah, that was the wake. That was the wake, and I am gutted that if I could have done that, that would have been perfect. That would have made it perfect. And I think that Rob would have liked that as well. Certainly his family would have, because they all had. That's what we were talking about at the wake. They were talking about all their memories about the times that Rob was with me and we were doing all of that stuff. The kids grew up with that. His missus was all part of it as well. But hey ho, it was what it was. And then I went back to the restaurant, and I was really late, and traffic was awful. um, and that was just horrible. And that kind of brings us up to speed, darlings. Next time I do something like that, I'm not going to try and burn the candle at both ends like that. Next time, I'll give the day to it. I'll book the time off at work, and I'll stay down there in a hotel. In fact, I'm thinking now that before too long, I should have a Monday night down there. So, because I put a post on Facebook showing where I was going and whatnot, then I had a few text messages and DMs off people saying, "How long are you down there for? I'd love to meet up." You know, names from the past. Another Sharon Cox. She pinged me and said, "Oh, it'd be great to meet up if you do." And quite a few. So I'm thinking that before too long, maybe before Christmas, I should come down to Worcestershire for a Monday and a Monday night and have a drink with all of those people and some of you who live locally, John, Cheeseburger, any of the rest of you who live within touching distance. I think I need to, I'd like to do that. It meant a lot to me to jump back into a world that I haven't thought about or spoken about or been part of for a while. And it was a very important part of my life. And it was a very beautiful part of my life and a very exciting part of my life. And I'm glad that I had those memories of it. And quite a few of the jigsaw pieces are missing. You know, I found out that so and so has died, so and so has died, so and so has died. But those that are left, I'd like to cling to them a bit, cling to those jigsaw pieces. I'm getting a bit emotional, so I'm going to just fly through the comments and then I'm going to get off because I said I wasn't going to cry tonight and I'm kind of on the verge. Oh dear. Bad Books went to a customer's funeral. Eulogy from his daughter, sarcastic eulogy from his wife, and then an unintelligible eulogy from his girlfriend. His wife and daughter confronted her. Very odd. Gosh. Mother surviving a child happened when my dad died. It was awful, says Cheeseburger. Yeah. Oh, well, this is Billy Connolly. Country music from Big Boaty, the man who put the into. Oh, video title from Cheeseburger. We almost got the band back together. R.I.P. Rob. Yeah. And Cheese is up for a meet in Worcestershire. That would be lovely. Guys, I'm going to go. I'm so tired that I just want to thank you honestly from the bottom of my heart. I expect tonight's been a bit, possibly not my best live, but I needed to do it. I needed to be with you. And I'm just so grateful to you all for giving me your time and meaning that I've been with friends tonight and that I've been able to talk and get some things out. So I'm not going to be going to bed with stuff running around my head. I've had a nice time with friends and I've been able to talk about what I wanted to talk about, and I'm really, really thankful to you all. So, oh, my granny was a cripple in Nashville, friends. This story I tell you is true. One day she went out in her wheelchair, never knowing it had a loose screw. Well, friends, a wheel came off of that wheelchair, and on 3 wheels she trundled away, and she fell right over the edge of a cliff in an old seaside town far away. Huddy holey, le, le, woo. And I'm going out on that one. I'm going out on that one. Thank you, darlings. So again, thank you so much. And yeah, please take one thing from this and from today. Take nothing and nobody for granted. If you love life, get out there and enjoy every second of every minute of it tomorrow and the day after, and as many days after as you're blessed with. And if you love somebody, spend time with them and let them know, because, one of these days, there we are. And I've got through without blubbing. I'm such a man. There we go. All right, darlings. I wish you all a safe and peaceful night. May you have a great day tomorrow. Thank you so much again from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, Skick, for your generous contribution. Thank you to those channel members who have renewed their membership. Thank you for not cancelling yours, Cheeseburger. And I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Same time, same place. Maybe a little bit of a happier face. So much love from me to each and every one of you. And have the best day that you can tomorrow. Good night. And as Dave Allen used to say, may your God go with you.